I'm discussing with you a landmark judgment by the Calcutta High Court. Suncraft India Private Limited. It's a landmark judgment and इस judgment से GST department को भी एक बहुत बड़ा धक्का लगा है because this is a judgment against the department and pro SSE. This case was heard by the Calcutta High Court dated 2nd August 2023 and the issue is input tax credit cannot be disallowed merely on the grounds of mismatch with 2A. Let us look at the facts of this case. Suncraft is registered under GST. It made purchases in the regular course of the business. जैसे कि आमतौर पे बाइंग एंड सेलिंग करते हैं, सनक्राफ्ट ने परचेजेस की है. अब इन्होंने जो सेलर है उनको जीएसटी पे कर दिया है. The Suncraft Energy Private Limited has remitted GST to the seller. सेलर को GST पे कर दिया है. And now जब मंथली रिटर्न भरना है, ड्यूरिंग द पेमेंट जब हम GSTR 3B फाइल करते हैं तो सनक्राफ्ट को ITC डिसअलाउ कर दिया गया to the respect of this purchase. ITC was disallowed to Suncraft Energy Private Limited for this particular purchase, reason being mismatch in 2A. 2A जो ऑटो पॉपुलेट होता है उसमें सनक्राफ्ट का ITC रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हो रहा था, इसीलिए सनक्राफ्ट को ITC डिसअलाउ कर दिया गया. तो सनक्राफ्ट ने अपील की टू द डिपार्टमेंट दैट वी हैव पेड द GST टू द सेलर. हमने सेलर को GST पे कर दिया है, लेकिन हमारा ITC डिसअलाउ हो गया है. काइंडली अलाउ इट. हमारे ITC को आप प्लीज अलाउ कर दीजिए. डिपार्टमेंट ने क्लियरली बोला आपके GSTR 2A में रिफ्लेक्ट नहीं हो रहा है, हम इसको अलाउ नहीं करेंगे. वी आर डिसअलाउइंग योर ITC. एंड सनक्राफ्ट ने अपने सारे एविडेंसेस एंड प्रूफ्स बताए दैट इट इज पेड द ITC द GST टू द डीलर, टू द सेलर. हमने हमारी तरफ से पे कर दिया है. द मिस्टेक इज फ्रॉम द सेलर साइड. सेलर ने ITC GST डिपार्टमेंट को पे नहीं किया है. इट इज द फॉल्ट ऑफ द सेलर who has not remitted, who has collected but not remitted the GST to the department. The department officials were adamant and they said nothing doing. We are not going to allow your ITC. That means your ITC is disallowed to the extent of this particular transaction. So aggrieved by this order of the department, Suncraft Energy Private Limited moved to the High Court. So the matter was listed and heard by the Honorable Calcutta High Court. After hearing both the sides and understanding the complete facts of the case, the Calcutta High Court upheld the petitioner's plea to allow the input tax credit and that only on the grounds of mismatch with 2A, the input tax credit should not be denied. It should not be disallowed for the taxpayer. The Honorable Calcutta High Court in its judgment has also laid down specifically a 5-pointer summary remarks for the department to be looked into. So let us understand what are these 5-pointer remarks. Firstly, the department should also take action against the seller or the supplier who has defaulted and who has not paid the GST to the government. जिसने GST नहीं भरा है, आप उसके अगेंस्ट तो कोई एक्शन लीजिए. यहाँ पे GST भरना किसको है? सेलर को भरना है. किसने GST कलेक्ट कर लिया है? सेलर ने कलेक्ट कर लिया है. किसने पे कर दिया है? बायर ने सेलर को पे कर दिया है. तो गलती किसकी है? गलती सेलर की है जिसने अभी तक डिपार्टमेंट को पे नहीं किया है. तो टैक्स पड़ा है सेलर के पास. So the Honorable Calcutta High Court has said the first action you have to take is against the seller. Catch hold of the seller, the supplier, and start an investigation, start an inquiry, do an audit, send a notice to the seller. The second point, 2A is not a final document for ITC availability. It is only a facilitative document for the ITC. Third point, कैलकाटा हाई कोर्ट ने एक और जजमेंट को रिमार्क किया है. अराइज इंडिया लिमिटेड जजमेंट बाय ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया. ये जजमेंट हुआ था ड्यूरिंग द वैट रेजिम. इफ द बायर इज बोनाफाइड, मतलब कि बायर ने GST पे कर दिया है सेलर को and the buyer has the proof and the evidence, मतलब के invoice है, tax paid चालान है, that means the buyer is bona fide and has the tax invoice and the tax receipt, then the credit has to be allowed to the buyer. And the Honorable Kolkata High Court has upheld that Arise India judgment is equally relevant even in the GST regime also. The fourth remark, if the seller is untraceable, or if the seller has gone missing, or if the seller's GST registration is cancelled, or the seller has no assets left, or the seller has shut down the business, or if the buyer and seller have collided, that means they have joined together to do some criminal activities. If the answer to all this is no, then the credit cannot be disallowed. That is, the credit has to be allowed to the buyer. And the fifth point, that is, if the buyer has all the evidences, that means he has the invoice of the payment, he has actually made the payment, he has the proof of receipt of the goods or services, and he has all the documents and records in place, and he has been filing his GST returns on time, then the credit will be available to such a buyer. Friends, after understanding the facts of the case and reading the entire judgment, it is my humble submission to the department that kindly see where the fault is and who is the defaulter, and kindly start investigation on the defaulter and not on the innocent person. The person taking the credit is not always the defaulter, and the person who has to remit the GST to the department can also be an offender. So it is my humble submission to the GST department to kindly verify the facts of the case, to study the facts and details of the case, to find out who is the defaulter, where the fault lies, and then start the investigation on the defaulter. So friends, this was the sum and substance of the landmark judgment of Suncraft Energy Private Limited for you. I hope it has been helpful to you, and I've been able to refresh you with this cup of finance coffee. Please subscribe, like and share so that you can also refresh everyone else with this refreshing finance coffee. मिलते हैं अगले वीडियो में एक नए टॉपिक के साथ. तब तक अपना ख्याल रखिए. धन्यवाद.